This is A Voice, a podcast with Dr. Gillian Kayes and Jeremy Fisher.
This is A Voice.
Hello and welcome to, I think this is podcast 9. I'm Jeremy Fisher.
And I'm Gillian Kayes. Good morning.
Hello, good evening, wherever you are. What is the topic today?
I've written down, make it work.
Make it work.
This tells you something about the television programmes that we tend to watch.
Yeah.
It's Runway, isn't it?
Runway, certainly, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, as you can tell, we have absolutely no idea where this podcast is going.
Have we prepared for it?
Normally, we have quite an interesting list of things that we want to talk about. And today, this was originally my idea, and we were talking about making it work and how we work and how we have come to create so many resources and what are the upsides and what are the downsides of being creative teachers.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you why this is on our mind, particularly at the moment.
Yeah.
For the last 6 months, it's longer than that, isn't it?
It's no
7
longer
months
that, yeah.
now since lockdown.
Yeah.
Like most of you, we've been riding the wave, kind of going along with it. And it's been a good time for us in terms of how we've been able to connect with the voice community. We feel very fortunate.
Yes.
But nevertheless, we've been riding a wave. And now what we're doing is we're actually taking some time more or less off.
We're tired.
Yeah, we are tired. As we would say in the UK, we are knackered.
We are knackered. It's been really interesting because prior to, I think we may have said this already, but prior to lockdown, we'd actually taken almost a year where we'd started to ease up on what we were doing.
Yeah, we called it the deep thought.
The deep thought moment. And because we wanted to know where we were going, what we were doing, what we'd already done, because sometimes when you do things, you don't recognise what they are. You just do them and move on. But you don't recognise what they are, and you don't necessarily recognise how powerful they are and what effect they have on people. And it's really interesting just looking at the list. We have something approaching 136 different resources.
Mm-hmm. I know. And look, I've got to say that when we've taken biz advice, which we have, one of the big things that comes up is brand ID. Okay, we have a lovely strong name, Vocal Process, for voices that work. But what we found out is that
people don't know what we do.
People don't know what we do. And that can be an issue when you're running a small business. I guess what's been good for us about lockdown is that we really focused on working with teachers.
Yes. And
that's kind of really strengthened our brand identity.
Can I have a small rant just right now?
Only if it's a small one.
It's a small one. I remember talking to somebody that we were working with, and he said, somebody was telling me about you, and he said, I know everything about their work. And I thought, I know that person. That person has been on one-day course with us. Mm-hmm. It is impossible to know everything about our work. Even people who've been on 3-day courses go, can we do another 3-day course? And then they discover that we actually know a lot more than that original 3-day course. And when you think that we have actually produced over 130 resources, we're not repeating ourselves in those resources. We know such a lot of stuff. And that's going to sound like a big, boast. And in fact, it isn't, because the whole process of us creating resources is about getting information out to people that we have.
It's just what we do. And the thing is, we've been doing it for 22 and a half years, something
together.
like that.
Yeah.
And 21 years of them in business together.
Yeah.
So
20 of them married.
I did, yes. We've done really well, haven't we?
We're still talking to each other.
Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Fisher.
Yeah.
So I did write a little list of things that we have. We've done. If you go onto our website.
Oh, can we just talk about the website?
How many pages on the website, Jeremy?
I cut it down to 250 pages, and that's not including the store.
Used to be over 300.
It used to be over 400 pages, and people just got completely lost on it.
And websites have changed. When we first sort of put the website or that version of the website together. Often there was loads of information on them, and lots and lots of different tabs to go through. And since really the mobile phone has taken off and everyone has a smartphone, We need much smaller chunks of information.
Go on to www.vocalprocess.co.uk and admire the horror. That website is so old, and we do apologise for it. So the part of the plan
And this is one of the reasons
Part of the
why
plan.
we're taking time off.
is to do a new website.
Yes.
So, I mean, what would be really interesting is if you told us what you want on the website, because I know there are certain things that I want that we haven't been able to put up front and centre. We have so many things like the BBC programme we did with Michael.
So we've got media stuff.
Michael Rosen,
Yes.
which is just gorgeous. Half an hour
And
of
then the radio.
us training him to do the spoken voice exercises and stuff like that. And I'd love to go back on that program and do singing voice as well. And then the
We
interviews.
could teach him to sing.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
He's doing quite well now, isn't
Yeah.
he? He was very, very poorly.
So, and then the programs where we were the voice gurus for Keris Matthews, that was
Yeah.
fun.
Oh,
And she was
that
just firing albums and CDs and voices at us and going, analyse that sort of thing. That was fun.
She was very good fun.
And then we've got a whole load of video stuff as well.
And we've done courses for performers and for teachers, for speech and language therapists, voice skills for speech and language therapists.
I think this is something that people don't necessarily know about. We train speech and language therapists in vocal physiology.
in voice skills.
I mean, we actually show them how voices work, which is an interesting dichotomy, really, because you assume that SLTs will be incredibly knowledgeable about physiology, and there are gaps in the training.
It's more to do with the functional aspect, because the mainstay of the training isn't about voice. Voice is considered a sort of a subspecialism in speech and language therapy.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not misrepresenting our lovely
No.
SLT and SLP colleagues.
Hello to the SLT, SLP people. Drop us a note if we have misrepresented you.
And I think it is possibly more the case in training in the UK. What else? Gosh, what have we done? Choral coaching. Lots of choral coaching in different contexts.
I mean, that's your background, really, isn't it?
Sneeze is coming.
Sneeze alert.
Achoo! Achoo!
Okay, be aware that when Gillian sneezes, there's normally about 8 of them.
Achoo!
That's 3. So that was Gillian sneezing, which went on for about 4 or 5 moments. And then actually it was really interesting because the microphone picks up very, very clearly the state of your voice. And your voice wasn't quite back to normal.
No, it wasn't. It felt a tiny bit croaky and a little bit trembly.
Yeah. So what did you do?
Can I see my little SOVT thing?
Yes. This is an SOVT straw, and this is relevant for our next podcast. This is the SOVT straw by Obi-Wan, which is a brilliant name. Oren Boda, who we'll be interviewing on the next podcast.
So I did a little bit of... And my favourite voice exercise is to use the first phrases from that we've used in our This Is a Voice book.
Yeah.
This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. And that is from Gary Provost's book about 100 best ways to write, I think.
It's a really excellent paragraph. It actually goes on further, but we use it because it's a really nice paragraph sentence to use as a sort of. It's not even an exercise. It's an
example
like
of
a test. It's
good
an
writing,
example.
isn't it? Yeah. Well, maybe we'll read the whole thing sometime because it has a really triumphant poetic ending. He understood that good writing was like music.
Yeah, we'll put that in the description at the end.
Okay,
so we were talking about
the fact that I had a background
choral
singing.
Choral singing. And so we've done choral workshops. And we've done choral workshops with contemporary choirs, we've done choral workshops with non-auditioned choirs, and we've done choral workshops with classical choirs. So we did the last one we did was a
barbershop.
And barbershop,
both
yes.
Barbershop, the guys and
the ladies.
And the ladies.
And then we did a mixed one. Yeah. The last workshop we did was a Verdi Requiem choral workshop, which is basically showing the choral singers how to cope with some of the real difficulties in the Verdi writing. Because some of it sits so high, some of it is really rhythmic, some of it you want punch, some of it you want a really diffused sound. So we were doing all sorts of exercises and techniques with them to make that performance really good.
Ooh.
No, the frog is still here.
Hello, frog.
That's not me, by the way.
That's good. Mucus is good for you.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Mr. Jeremy Fisher is a character in Beatrix Potter stories. It's the frog in Beatrix Potter. Remarkably stupid frog, I think, so I'm not that pleased. And my parents did tell me that they didn't know about the story when they named me, and I'm thinking, yes. So school was not fun. But people know my name now, which is really interesting because they go, oh, I've heard of you.
They say, oh, I've heard of you. And we say nothing.
We say nothing.
So where did we get to? I
have no idea.
I did have this list in my head of choral coaching,
choral
workshops.
Audition workshops, schools workshops, insets, bespoke trainings, conferences. We do the lot.
Yeah, and we're looking at our website and thinking, well, how are we going to trim this down? What do we want it to tell people? And then it's a real moment, as in arg.
Yeah, who are we?
I mean, what are we? Who are we?
Yeah, and what do we do? I mean, I have to say, it would be really interesting to hear from you to tell us who we are and what it is that we do.
Yeah, and how you see us. I think that's really important. And we love it if you say legend, but legend who? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what we were thinking about in a way, and what we wanted to talk about today, was how is it that we deliver the information about the voice and voices that work in so many different ways, and for different audiences, and for audiences at different levels.
Yes.
And I'm using the word audience intentionally here because when you're writing for someone, when you're preparing a workshop for someone, when you're writing a lesson plan, you're creating a course, it is an audience that you're working with.
Well, in order for something like that to be successful, actually, you can just, basically stand up there and say anything you want. In order for it to be successful, you have to understand your audience and you have to understand who it is that you're writing or creating for.
Yeah, I mean, that's why in an earlier podcast we talked about the singer in the room.
Yes.
Obviously, the singer isn't an audience in that sense, but they are an individual, and that when you're working with them, the lesson that you give must be taking that individuality into account. So I would say two things actually, and they're related, that we use in our creativity is we think about context and we think about purpose. And actually that's quite important, because often what will happen when I'm creating is I'll have a germ of an idea and I'll come to Jeremy and I'll say, oh, I've had an idea, and head in hands.
Now be fair, you come to me and you're going, we're doing this, and I'm going, what?
And he'll say, what's the purpose? And that is a nice bit of creative sparking that goes on between us.
Yes.
Sometimes a little bit more than a spark. But actually, you do need to know what the purpose is. Who is it that you want to connect with? Who is it you're communicating with? What is it that you think they need?
Yes.
And what's the best way of helping them to understand? So obviously, if you're working with a bunch of school kids, it's going to be very different from a bunch of avocational singers who are maybe high up in their own professional field, and different again, delivering information about voice skills to speech and language therapists.
Yes, well actually, if you just take singers and you look at level and age, and when we talk about age, we're not necessarily talking about physical age, we're also talking about experience age. So you can have some 10-year-olds who are already leads in the West End. They are extremely experienced singers, even though they are only 10 years old. And you can have some 50-year-old adults who are inexperienced singers, therefore they have chronological age, but not experience age.
So if you are putting something together, either in a more formalised business context, or you're creating a product or an event, think about the context and purpose I think that's really important. So
Context is everything.
yeah,
I mean,
so you
genuinely, I
understand
think
your audience and how you're going to connect with them.
context is everything, because everybody has information, everybody has knowledge. But when you share that knowledge and you don't actually put it into the context that you are giving it into, if you like.
It's got to be in a framework.
It's a framework.
It's got to be, you know, there has to be a frame of reference.
I think what's interesting about all the stuff that we've done, because obviously we've done books, courses, lesson plans, I mean, all sorts of things. Each one, and I love this, and I know I said this in the last podcast, give me a format and I will work out how to make it work. It's one of my things.
You really do.
Yeah, and I like that, because each format has something very different that it has to give. And if you look for the format and its strengths, that's when that format becomes successful. So when we're writing, you have a format that is word only. Now, word really creates imagination. You take something off the page and you can imagine it, you can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it, you can do all sorts of things with it. And it's often why when a really good book is made into a film, the film is very different. First of all, you are having to identify immediately how somebody looks, how somebody moves, what the setting is, what the costumes are, whereas you do that in your imagination when you're reading. And secondly, your idea of something, you also have to edit in a film some things that you don't edit in a book. So lots of book is about description, and that description can be very specific, can be very precise, can be very elaborate, and yet on film you get instant hit. So you get everything in that description in one frame, and you've either got to get it quotes right, or you go off somewhere else. I was only watching last night on YouTube a thing about a historical costume, that how many films get historical costume approximately right, but then they go, oh, well, this is for modern audience sensibilities, therefore those wigs can't look that ridiculous, even though they did look that ridiculous in that period.
Well, that's a frame of reference.
It's a frame of reference. And when you go into a different format, you have a completely different frame of reference.
I want to point out how much Jeremy has used visual language. I mean, he loves film and he loves television.
I tend to see things televisually.
Yeah, so I can share with you that sometimes when we're putting a PowerPoint together for a presentation that we're doing or a conference, and it'll often be me that comes up with the general framework and the course of the information. I'm quite linear in the way that I think, I must admit it.
And I'm not.
Yeah. And so, I'll throw these things into the PowerPoint, and then Jeremy will look at it and he'll say, I can't really do anything until I've seen it, and I need the images here.
Yeah.
And that's it. Again, it's that sort of different approach that we have that I think really strengthens what we do.
Well, it's also why I edit well, because I have also edited books, and it's because I can see the through route. And notice I use visual language all the time, even though I'm a non-specific, which basically means I'm a concept person. If I get the concept, I can see how the whole thing works, and I'm still using C language. But if I'm a concept person, so if I don't get the concept, no amount of you explaining it to me will work for me. I will just go, nope, don't get it. Nope. Oh, okay, got it. Right, it works like this. And everything will then fall into place. So when I'm editing stuff, I'm going, well, that fits there and that fits there, but that doesn't fit there. That's something completely different. Let's shift that around. And I'm actually using a lot of, also physical because I'm shifting my hands around, but I use a lot of imagery in order to get something to flow really well.
I'm much more of a sequencer and a processor.
You are. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go on and talk about...
Before we do, can I just talk about the app?
Okay.
I mean, because we have an app which is the 1 minute voice warm-up. And the 1 minute voice warm-up was very interesting. We were approached by Speech Tools, Hi Speech Tools, hi Sam and Gary, and we loved their stuff already. We'd already reviewed it, and they said, would we like to do an app with them? And we had such a great meetings about how this was going to work and what we wanted to do. And it was Gary who came up with the 1 minute workout. And that immediately I went, oh, can we actually do vocal exercises in 1 minute? Can we get them down, refine them that much that they are effective in 1 minute? And once we'd got that concept, we started to get the exercises that we wanted to do. And we had a description section which was like a tutorial.
Yeah, and the visuals were really important, weren't they? Now, this is a case where Jeremy just turned his hand to something he'd never done before.
I can't draw.
Because we were wondering how we were going to create the images, because people expect imagery.
I love cartoons.
And we didn't want to do a video.
No. I love. We definitely didn't want to do live video. We didn't think that was the point. I love cartoons, and I've actually been playing with cartoons. I published a couple of cartoons just on the website.
Didn't you just go onto Google Draw or something?
I went to Google Draw, which is the simplest program you can get. And I thought, I can't think of anybody that could draw this stuff. And even if they did, I wouldn't necessarily know how to describe it. I'm going to have to do it. So I went onto Google Draw, and I love line drawings. I love black and white line drawings. So I went, let's do some line drawings. And I literally spent a day going, how do you draw a profile of a head? How do you draw the vocal folds? How do you draw the throat? And came up with all of these things, and then sort of cartoonized them and made them move or morph, or created the cartoons for the videos. And it took some time. I'm not going to deny that. That took some time. But it was, I'm so proud of that app.
So
it's
you should
really
be.
good.
Yeah, so you should be. And also for that, not just the ideas that we, put together, the both of us, and especially with Sam.
Yeah.
But the way it panned out visually, I'm going to cough.
You need the 1 minute voice warm up.
Believe it or not, I have warmed up today. I blame it all on the sneeze. Okay. The other thing is, you do need to know your stuff if you're going to create.
Yes.
I think you have to be confident in your knowledge. As it happens, because of our interest, which is about voice and making voices work in different contexts, one of our big strengths is our knowledge of vocal function, and I'm going to let you speak while that cough removes itself from my throat.
Vocal function. People talk about anatomy and physiology all the time, and anatomy is the bits, and physiology is how they move. And it's lovely knowing all the bits. And actually, to be honest, you can go into micro-minute detail, particularly now that people are looking at brain function and nerve function, and you are in micro detail about how things work. What I think is good about physiology and the way that we understand it is that you're looking at essentially at mechanics and engineering. So you're looking at, this is connected to that, the knee bone is connected to the shin bone, but what's more important is how the knee and the shin interact in movement. And usually you'll find it's not one muscle. It's several sets of muscles that are working in synergy. So when one
muscles
muscle
aren't solo activators
as
a rule.
No, they're not. And in a way, this is where the micromanaging can go wrong, where you go, well, this is the vocalis muscle is doing this. And I'm going, well, the vocalis muscle can't do that.
What's it joined onto?
And what else is counteracting it? So the vocalis muscle can't do that until this set of muscles lets go and allows it then to move whatever that particular thing is. And I think what's important about physiology and mechanics and engineering is that you start to pan back. I'm using visual language again. You start to pan back until you can see more of the structure and how it's interconnected with other things. That is something that we understand on quite a deep level. And it's actually why we go, these are the exercises that we use, these are the fixes that we do, and this is why we know they work. And I think it's really interesting. I would say that an understanding of physiology and mechanics is probably the most important thing if you're going to teach singing. And there's one other bit, which is the context of performance. If you get those two, you are almost certainly going to be a successful singer. And I just want to talk about physiology because for me, understanding physiology is not about what someone has told you. It is not about what you have learned, what someone has said. This
or
muscle,
the lecture that you attended.
or the lecture that you attended, or even the set of courses that you've
well
done.
done for attending it, by the way. But often what happens, I think, in pedagogy courses is that quite rightly you are presented with information about the mechanics of the voice. But if you don't understand how those work in context, then sometimes what happens is you come out with all this information and you don't know how to purpose it. What's it for?
Not only is that information in isolation, but it's been taught in isolation as you can move this muscle, and no attention is being paid to anything else that's going on. That always worries me, because it's not real. I mean, it's lovely, but it's not real. And so what you and I have done is to sit and work out stuff that we have not necessarily been taught.
Yeah, but also not necessarily on our own. I think we've mentioned before that we do hang out with clinicians as much as we can.
We do.
And this is an ongoing journey for us, as medical knowledge itself and the instrumentation for looking at the voice while it's in action.
I think
as that develops, we constantly ask questions of colleagues who know more about what's going on in the inside. I mean, one of the highlights of this year for me, I don't think I've talked about this yet in the podcast. The highlight of my year so far was having a 3-day internship at the Deutsche Stimmklinik with Professor Markus Hess and his colleagues, where I was not only able to sit in clinic and watch case history taking and diagnosis, but I was also invited to watch operations. So I went into theatre in my scrubs, and it was an enormous privilege to see the physiology of the voice in action. I learned a lot from that, and this is the kind of thing, I mean, we must go again when we're able to travel. This is the kind of thing that informs us, and as I said, it's an ongoing journey.
There's one more thing that I think is important, and that is a very healthy sense of bullshit.
Ah.
I am in fact wearing the Vocal Process Bullshitometer badge. Yes, it's real. I had it designed, and the Vocal Process Bullshitometer badge has magical powers. When you wear it, you get me whispering in your ear going, I think this is bullshit.
Always stay curious, and if you hear something maybe delivered in a very didactic way and it doesn't make sense to you, then ask a question. And if you feel that question isn't fully answered
or avoided,
or maybe the person you're questioning isn't able to say, actually, I don't know, then, use your bullshitometer meter and just go and check it out from somewhere else. And that applies if you hear us say something and you go, what?
Oh, you can question us.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. If we say
love questions.
Yeah, if we say something that you don't agree with, question us. Because either we'll know what we're talking about and we'll be able to explain it, or we'll go, well, you could be right.
And I'm going to say this. I do think that our ability to deconstruct vocal function in this way, the fact that people know we are ongoing studiers, and the fact that we are able to say, we don't know, this isn't our area, I think it gives people quite a lot of trust in us as trainers.
Because what we do know, we know at a deep level, and what we don't know, usually we know we don't know.
Yeah.
Usually.
It's essential to know what you don't know.
Yeah.
As far as you can.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Well, let's talk about the next bit, which is the performance and the context of performance.
Music. We love language.
We're both musically trained. And do you know, it's really surprising that there are actually, quotes, singing teachers out there who don't have musical training or experience. Now, this is interesting because it's different.
We're not talking here about music reading. We're not talking about music literacy.
No.
We have talked about this before, so we shouldn't over-egg it.
Fine.
Okay.
I won't over-egg it. But this is really interesting that we equate musical experience and musical training as being the same thing because it gives you different aspects of how music works. What's fascinating is that you can also have people with really intense musical training but not that much performing experience, and therefore they don't get to find how that music works in context again. So we're always talking context. We know a lot of singing teachers who don't necessarily read music that well. They haven't had classical training, and that is not necessarily a bad thing, by the way. We'll talk about that in a moment. But they have huge experience of actually doing the job, being up on stage, being in the recording studio, doing it. And therefore you have so much to bring when you have that level of experience.
Can we talk about language?
Yes.
Jeremy and I are both avid readers, avid readers from childhood. I'd sort of read all of George Eliot's work by the time I was in the second year at my secondary school.
I was more science fiction.
I was never a big Dickens fan, but I read loads and loads of Thomas Hardy. I'd read all the Brontes, etc., etc. I just loved reading.
I'm going to just say, when people come to the house, we have something like 12 sets of bookshelves. And there's a very straightforward divide.
This is for the light reading, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. If you see anything that is English literature, that'll be Gillian's. If you see anything that is science fiction, comedy, or spirituality, that'll be mine.
And if you see anything that's fairly hardcore, psychological thriller.
Oh yeah, you do the blood and guts.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
the
anything to do with forensics.
Yeah, so in crime, because we both love crime books, you do the blood and guts and the forensics, and I do the historical. It's the equivalent of easy listening because it's important.
And oddly enough, I'm happy to read about that stuff, but once or twice when I've tried to watch it on TV, I'm just thinking of some of Linda LaPlante's stuff. I couldn't watch it. I'm okay to read about it. I don't want to see it. It's too visceral.
Yeah, but we're right back to the thing that I said almost at the beginning, which is when you read it in a book, you imagine it yourself. When you see it on television, it has been imagined for you. And I think this is also about discovery. It's personal discovery. Sometimes when people will teach you something or say something or will demonstrate something, and you understand it on quite a deep level. And sometimes you just go, oh, that's really interesting. And it absolutely bypasses you. And I think this is all about personal understanding and your personal... It's not even your style of learning. It's just whether you take something in and get it or whether you don't.
And you are very hot on communication.
Yes.
If you communicate clearly with Jeremy, he's a very, very happy bunny.
Absolutely.
So, why did we talk about language? Because, well, first of all, because we have done, we created products for spoken voice, haven't we?
Yeah.
And there's a whole section on spoken voice in This Is a Voice, and the app is geared towards spoken voice.
And I'm doing voiceover coaching now, which is fun.
You are.
Love doing that. So much to play with in that.
But because when we sing, we usually sing words.
Yep.
And I in particular love text. Because I worked for 20 years in drama schools, I got to hang out with some really good voice and text people, and I just love digging into all of that and finding out how Shakespeare works, kind of finding out about meter, kind of really being able to look at the poetic side of song.
But also as a classical singer, you headed for Lieder rather than opera.
I did indeed, yes. I used to do my own translations. Yeah. Jeremy, why don't you talk, because we've been talking about loving music and loving language. Do you want to talk a little bit about rhythm?
Oh, yes.
As you are the rhythm person.
Rhythm is really interesting because when we think of rhythm as a musician, you tend to think of crotchets and quavers and eighth notes and 16th notes and rests and stuff like that. And in fact, rhythm and pulse tend to be slightly different things. Pulse is the sort of overview feel. Anybody who sings Motown or rock will understand pulse because it's a feel thing. But pulse actually goes through, it doesn't just go through all music. And I have to tell you, if I can't feel the pulse of a piece, I'm really quite upset.
You're disturbed.
I am. Yeah. It's really strong. But also pulse goes through spoken voice as well. And you will notice, by the way, in the different speeds that we speak, tend to reflect our personality. I will not really do slow speaking. Or I might do slow speaking while I'm thinking of the rest of the sentence. And then I'll speed up again.
Jeremy's goal is to fit in as many concepts and words as he possibly can within the same sentence.
I'm going to pick you up on that. That's not the case. I do subclauses. So I do a lot of subclauses. But mostly it's because my brain works really fast. And I have all of these ideas and I have to get them out to the point where sometimes my mouth just doesn't keep up.
And we like the links between that kind of the prosody of speech and how that translates into song.
Yes.
And anyone who's a Sondheim fan will know exactly how that works.
Or Jason Robert Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, he writes really good conversational music.
If you speak the text and you speak it with inflection and meaning, it's so close to the rhythmic structure in many, many cases.
Yes.
Okay. Whew, right.
So where are we going with this? Why are we doing this? What's the context?
Should we... I mean, I'm just wondering if we could give some examples of stuff that we put together. For instance... I know we've talked before about why we did the webinars.
Oh, yeah.
But so if you imagine, us creating a webinar on a particular topic and meeting that need.
Usually we created a webinar. In fact, almost all our webinars were created for a specific reason. And often it was to counteract bullshit. It was to counteract the bullshit that was out there.
We could say myth busting.
Yeah. I mean, I think in one of the... 2 of the webinars, there's a myth-busting section.
But it's more than that. It's actually giving people the information and the tools that they need in order to learn that particular topic. So we've got 3 troubleshooting webinars, haven't we?
We have.
And those webinars, they came right at the end of the series, actually. And we felt that and this was in particular for teachers, that what teachers needed was to be able to look at songs in context and to see how to purpose, the work that we do in vocal exercises on breathing, how to purpose that within the context of a song. And in this case, we had 2 or 3 different songs. So we looked at, problem solving within the song. So we were thinking very much about the problems that the singer might meet. And how the teacher would address those issues within the context of the music and understanding of the physiology of breathing and the sorts of breathing exercises that singing teachers tend to use. So that's an example of how the creativity and all those elements we've just talked about took us to create that product.
I'm going off at a little tangent on breathing. It is extraordinary for me how many people do breathing exercises that don't involve voice. And I'm not sure, honestly, not sure what the purpose of that is, because if you're going to do breathing for singing, singing by its very definition is voiced. Yes, you will have unvoiced consonants, but they won't form the main bulk of singing. The main bulk of singing is voicing. So if you're going to do breathing exercises but you're not involving voicing, what are you teaching? Because voicing is interrupted airflow. So if you're not going to set that up to start with within the exercise, what are you teaching? I'm sure that we will get comments on this and people will say, well, it's perfectly obvious
what we're teaching. We're going to get a comment from me, actually. The comment from me is it's to do with awareness. And sometimes, do you remember when we did that course for the speech and language therapists back in March? And, we went almost straight away into doing things like, because to us this is obvious.
Yeah.
And I think somebody put their hand up and said, well, but what about people who simply have no sense of their abdominal wall? And we really had to backtrack.
True.
And one thing we did, I remember, was that we had people just sitting, in a balanced stance and just resting their hands on their bellies with a little bit of weight and feeling what was moving, because so many people aren't in contact with that. So it is about tuning in and awareness, and those exercises do have value. I think what you've got to remember is that a lot of the community of people we work with already have some awareness. That was us responding to our audience.
I'll take that.
Yes.
What is interesting...
Lesson learned.
What is interesting is that what you're talking about is awareness. And although awareness runs through quite a lot of the whole business of singing or speaking or performing, what you're talking about is like a pre-exercise, which is you need to become aware of something before you can move it. Now, that's not always the case.
Yeah, it's not an exercise, it's awareness. And I think that's different.
I think what bugs me about people who do breathing, this is for singing, breathing exercises that don't involve voicing, is that what they don't realise is that essentially that's an awareness set of awareness exercises.
And everything changes when you open your mouth to make a noise.
Everything changes. Pressure changes, flow changes, volume changes, sound changes.
And the internal feedback that you have changes.
So if you're going to do, I know you've done your breathing exercises, now let's sing a song. That's too big a step. There aren't any interim steps there.
I'm going to support a little bit of your idea, because now what's happened is that it's popped into my mind that someone I worked with decades ago at the Actors Centre when we lived in London. Very nice guy. He was an actor. And he talked about the column of air. And I was listening to him sing, and it was maybe the first or second lesson, just sort of getting a chance to get to know him and what his patterns were. And I said, tell me about the column of air. And he said, well, I'm keeping the column of air at all times. And I thought, okay, somehow I've got to debunk this column of air, because if you think about it, if you're using that idea and maybe you've done a lot of floor work and you're really focusing on this, all of that's going to change the minute you interrupt your airflow. Mm-hmm. And suppose then you're trying to keep that sensation, that lovely sensation of the column of air, while you're vocalizing. What is that going to do to your voice?
And what's it going to do to your stopped consonants?
And how is that going to work out in certain parts of your range? So we kind of wrapped very beautifully the column of air and said, that's lovely when you need to kind of tune into your body. Now what we want to do is find out what happens when we bring voice in. So that's... You're thinking of those sorts of things, aren't you?
I am. I think the column of air is an interesting one, because often when people use it, they use it as a given, and it's not a given. I think when the column of air idea actually might work is when somebody is simply not feeding enough air under their vocal folds, and then you need an imagery thing. I mean, imagery is an interesting one. There are some images that work very well. There are some images that actually are connected to neural linkages, and there are some images that work well for the teacher but have absolutely no meaning for the student.
You've got to make things up for your students, I think.
Yep.
So, we kind of ended up sort of in agreement.
So,
how many diversions have we had today?
Loads.
Lots of
I mean, we've had
diversions.
so many diversions, I can't even remember what the original track is. What is this about?
Creativity and making it work.
Okay, creativity, making it work. Let's get right back to that. Creativity is taking something and making something different. So what you have a really, really good skill at putting people together. So that you can get groups of people together, or you can get pairs of people together, and they will create together. It's bringing people, it's not even like-minded. You have a really good skill at this. Whereas I will look at things and go, I do things. I mean,
I'm more of a people person, collaborator.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, I'm a collaborative pianist, so I'm working with people as a musician all the time.
But I do this.
Nevertheless, I've been loving lockdown because I don't have to collaborate with people.
I do this with information, with facts, with skills. One of the things I love is the interconnectedness of things. So from that point of view, we're actually a very good team, because he's the concept person and the purpose person, and I'm looking at the interconnectedness of things and seeing how things link together. And I think that really helps people who come to work with us, because none of this stuff that we're talking about with voice, whether it's singing, whether it's speech and language therapy, none of it exists in a vacuum.
Yes,
I think that's really important.
I'm going to say because that's what you connect, and it's what you respond to. I respond to energy. Without question, I respond to energy. So it's the energy of a thing. Things have energy. It's one of the reasons, by the way, why I can unlock stiff locks, which is going to sound really weird.
He does.
But Gillian will go, this door is stuck, and I'll just go, here's the key, and it goes like that. And it opens. And because I'm sensing the energy...
You become the key.
I become the keyhole. Just sounds like a weird sentence. But things have energy, people have energy, and I'm able to put people and things together, which is why I'm so good on repertoire. I can find songs for people where I go, this song will fit your energy. The same song will not fit your energy, because you're a different energy, but here's an energy that will work for you. And I know, I mean, all the actors are going, but I have lots of things that I can do. Yes, of course you do. Yes, everybody does. Nevertheless, that's as close as I can get, which is it's an energetic exchange.
Do you know what? You've just done a segue. You have done a very neat segue to talk about the song lists.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sponsors today are Vocal Process, and we have 3 specific things that are sponsoring us today, and that is our song lists. Now, those of you who are on our mailing list, if you're not on the mailing list, just go on the vocalprocess.co.uk website and join. I think it was last week, I sent out an email about the song lists, and somebody had emailed me and said, I bought your song list, one of the song lists, but I'm not quite sure how to use it. Now, we have 3 song lists. These
are databases of songs.
Spreadsheet databases of songs, but they're much bigger than that. So the first one is a general song list, which has repertoire for adults, changing voices boys, changing girls. It has folk, MT, musical theatre, it has classical, it has all sorts of things in it.
Pop or CCM.
There's 193 songs or song books in that list alone. The second one is, we then did 2 specialist lists, which are specialist musical theatre lists for female voice and for male voice.
And these were put together by one of our accredited trainers,
Kate Gavigan,
who is very, very experienced at working in musical theatre, both at university level and also, taking young people right through the whole exam process.
She is particularly good on repertoire for changing and settling voices, so the sort of 11 to 18, 19 age group, really good.
One of the things that we asked her to do was to talk about the pitch range of the song, where most of the song centers pitch wise, what kind of energy it would suit. I think is there a column about whether the words are suitable or not for someone of under 10?
No, that comes in notes. There's a notes column, there's a pitch range column, and also voice type. So you'll have baritone, C3 to F sharp 4. So you'll have absolutely specific notes that the song goes to. You've got what type of song it is. I mean, yes, we have ballad and up tempo, but within that ballad and up tempo, you have about 6 or 7.
It's like pattern, narrative.
We have
lyrical, romantic.
Yeah, so all sorts of subcategorizations of that. You have composer, lyricist, the year it was written, the show it comes from, or the artist who originally recorded it. So there's a lot of information in these.
And these have been tried and tested by Kate. So she knows that these work for students in particular situations. And we felt that, we know there are other song lists out there, but we didn't think there was anything that gave teachers this critical information about, okay, I've got a student here who's very thoughtful. I need to get them singing in a slightly more contemporary style. Is there a nice narrative song that I can get them to sing? What's the pitch range? Because obviously you can always transpose. Is this going to be suitable for that particular female singer?
And also, if you are if you have students that are auditioning for drama schools, very often they will be given a specific year that they want the song before or after. So it's pre-1970s up tempo, and you can search on the database for pre-1970s up tempo. The musical theatre female list has 219 songs in it, which is extraordinary, and the specialist musical theatre male list has 250 songs. And this didn't really come about deliberately, but it is interesting that I think songs for the men are more difficult to find, and therefore we've got more in there.
That's what Kate said.
Yeah. And the reason that I sent the email out last week was because of the person who contacted me and said, I'm not sure how to use the databases. And so,
is it an Excel?
It's an Excel spreadsheet.
CSV,
the general song list is a .xls. XSLX, whatever it is, And the two specialist lists are .csvs, so they will open in anything.
We are not sponsored today by Microsoft, sadly.
Absolutely not, no. Although we have worked at Microsoft headquarters. And so I created a video showing people how to set up a spreadsheet and sort and filter. And filtering is amazing. Filtering will do all the work for you.
So for example, if I was looking for lyrical,
yeah.
and then so I do a search for lyrical.
What you do is you go into the column, you select the whole thing. I mean, you'll see this on the video because I actually do simple filtering and then I do complex filtering where I'm filtering 3 columns at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
So you can go into the style column and actually you can either do the filter, do the pull down filter and then tick everything that says lyrical in it. Or you can do something much simpler, which is you go into the search box that's part of the filter and you type in lyric. And anything in the list that contains the word lyric or lyrical will filter itself out and you're left with a list, and it can be lyrical ballad, lyrical up-tempo, lyrical contemporary, it can be all sorts of things.
Good. So the little YouTube video that you've made shows you how to do that. I mean, I know lots of people know how to navigate spreadsheets.
You'd be surprised. I've been using spreadsheets for some time, and it was actually only when that particular person said, I'm not sure how to use the spreadsheets, that I put down all of these thoughts. And in fact, the search box I'd never used before. I'd just done filtering by hand. I'd done, ticking and unticking. And I show you a quick way of selecting the ticks as well. So I learned something doing the making the video myself. So yes, it's on YouTube. It's
share the joy.
Share the joy. So like I said, the video, I use the specialist mail database to use that as a demonstration. I have blanked out some of the song names, so you don't get the database for free. Sorry.
But it's not expensive, is it?
The general list of the 193 songs is £5.
Okay.
And the 2 specialist musical theatre ones are £10 each. But go on the YouTube channel and have a look at how it works, because it is an extraordinary resource when you are just looking for songs and you have the person in front of you and you're going, I want a post-1970s up-tempo that is baritone range that doesn't go higher than a G. Sorted. I think there's 16 of them. So,
What a mine of information you are. Okay. So, shall we talk? Do you know, we haven't had any AMAs for ages.
We haven't.
We must get some AMAs out for our next podcast, which we're going to flag. Should we have a little moment?
We shall. Just if you're watching this on YouTube, we are holding up our straws. These are the SOVT. These are the Oren Boder's OB1 metal straws. They are really good, and this is Mark II that we have. But so in fact, for the next,
what are we going to be talking about next? Jeremy?
Excuse the Moomins from next door. What next podcast is, Oren is actually going to be our guest on the podcast. So the whole podcast is dedicated to SOVT, or semi-occluded vocal tract exercises.
It's under a generic title of Lockdown Heroes.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to have a few guests under that title, because it's been amazing to see what some people have been doing across the last few months, and we're not out of the woods yet with this, but this is exactly a case where people have been creative and have been making it work in whatever, with whatever challenges that they've met, and have still come out with something amazing.
There is an extraordinary story behind Oren's achievements, and we want to share some of that as well as some of the exercises and some of the chat. So what we want you to do is to deliver us some AMAs, some
please.
Ask Me Anythings, and we have something very specific for you if we haven't mentioned it before, which is speakpipe.com/vocal process. And if you go on to speakpipe.com/vocal process, you can record an AMA for us and we will play your recording on the podcast. We've done that before, but we know there's going to be lots of AMAs
we want
on
lots.
this one.
And also be really helpful for Oren as he's moving forward
Yes.
with with the development of his SOVT work.
Yes. So that will be the next podcast. You have approximately a week to do those speak pipes.
We're recording on the 19th.
Yeah, because this one won't. We normally record 2 or 3 days before because I get the time to edit everything. So you'll have about a week to 10 days to deliver us some AMAs. So please do that. Check out the Vocal Process YouTube channel. Check out any of the links. Anything that we've mentioned will be linked in the description for the podcast.
Oh, and don't forget to drop us a line saying, this is how we see you, Jeremy and Gillian, and try to be polite.
You don't necessarily have to be polite. We'll just delete you if you're rude.
Are we done?
I think we're probably done.
I think we're done.
That was quite an interesting one. We really weren't sure where we were going with this one, but we were fairly fluent on it.
We hope you've enjoyed it. Okay.
So we'll see you next. Oh,
Hooray!
Thank you. Been dying to use that. Recorded it ages ago. So we are done, and we will see and hear and talk to you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
This is A Voice, a podcast with Dr. Gillian Kayes and Jeremy Fisher.